You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Light, movement, color, and emotion are staples in our work. We are inspired by people, their stories, quirks, and their chemistry. We take a storytelling approach to weddings and portraiture that is colorful, fashion-influenced, and alive. We start today's episode with a quote from our guest, Kesha Lambert's own website, which in and of itself is a real treat to look at. It makes it easy to want to work with her. Kesha is a New York area wedding, family, and portrait photographer. Her work can be intimate and it can be playful. I've seen wide-angle photographs of wedding parties that are joyous and cool and shots of brides that are about as close as a hug. Her work is that good, and today we're going to find out a little bit about what makes her tick. Kesha is a mom. She's a lawyer. She's a member of the Wedding Photojournalists Association and a Sony Artisan of Imagery. She'll be speaking at the Depth of Field Portrait and Wedding Conference on March 7th and 8th, 2021. This is a free virtual conference hosted by B&H and sponsored by Canon, Nikon, Sony, Godox, and HP NVIDIA. Check out the B&H website for further details. In the meantime, Kesha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for that amazing introduction. I feel so welcome.
Let's start with your website, which is really, it's a terrific site. Not only for your style, but obviously your work, but the connection that we feel to you and your family and your clients. What I love is that you introduce us to your tribe. And that is such a nice touch to start off with. I mean, we get to see you and your family because that's like unusual. It's also neat that you've listed the locations and venues that you've worked and made the style of weddings easily searchable. In a very short time, visitors get to know a lot about what you bring to the table, and that's really important. You get that of course, really quickly. How much time do you put into the website, and what's the feedback you've had so far? Do you have help building this, or are you flying on your own?
So for my website, and thank you for that great feedback. I'm happy to hear that the design and the content resonates, because that you touched on some points that were the intention in putting the website together. So for this website, the way it currently looks, I got help. I have links that directly bring a potential client or bring the viewer to styles of weddings, types of lighting. They can easily find venues that I've worked at. I share about myself. The design and style of the website, I had the help of a web designer, and it was at the recommendation of an industry friend of mine, Walter Van Duzen. He saw my website and he's just pulled me aside and he made some suggestions, and that the rest was history. So I worked with a professional to get my website all set up. Before that, I did spend a great amount of time kind of doing my own thing, and it worked well for me. The content was similar. I've always believed in sharing a little about myself because weddings, people work is very personal. And so I think people want to know about you and feel connected to you.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree.
yeah, but the design, the approach, the experience on the website definitely changed at the hands of a pro.
I got to follow up that because I want to stay on your website because I think it has a lot to do with what you do, how you work, and how you approach things. And there's one part that you have FAQs, which is good to have, frequently asked questions, things that people want to know. I think the way you started it is really interesting. You're not talking about weddings and how many hours and what you get for your dollar and all this stuff. You start talking about light. And how starting early in the morning, how, it's warm and then it gets a little cooler and harsher, and what you do at different times of day, working with the light, and also explaining that sometimes the light doesn't and the weather doesn't always agree, and we do alternatives. But you start off by giving an education on light as understood by a photographer, and that's what runs the show. And therefore, because who thinks of these things? Why does she have to do this at 10 o'clock in the morning? Well, there's a reason why. Okay? and I think that's really good that you do that. And then you go right from there, you start talking about, it's really good idea to have a second photographer, a second shooter on board, and why. And it makes it very hard to say, yeah, because if you read what you wrote, it makes a lot of sense. And again, it's a one-shot deal. The only part of this that kind of got me here is that you go, we don't need a shot list. Really? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, and that's one expectation that I like to get out in front of with clientele, because and you'll find that I'm not unique in this position. People might not verbalize it so directly and openly, but I think it's important to get out in front of that expectation. So what I mean by that is I definitely collect all the intel about people. So I do gather shot lists. I look at Pinterest boards and inspiration boards and design uh, decks and things like that. I want all the information in the days leading up to the wedding day. I'm big on info, in gathering intel about the people I'm working with and what they're planning. On the wedding day, I will not carry a shot list. I find it is a distraction, and it's unnecessary distraction. That's because my approach is storytelling. My approach, although I'm not a fully documentary photographer, because I do immerse myself into the experience at times and offer direction, and a lot of direction actually. But my approach is not to be following an ordered list of shots. And I explain the value and benefit of taking this approach as it pertains to my style. The things that you see in my portfolio that wow and excite you are a reflection of me being fully present on your wedding day, being fully observant, seeing things and capturing the magic that unfolds right there in the moment. Now, when it comes to shot lists, I do study them as a means of getting a window into what really speaks to the client, what things that they might, that particularly excite them. I also want to know if there are important people and important, if they chose a venue specifically for this amazing bridge at this venue, I want to know that. However, I will not have a list. If there's a particular spot or particular people, please designate someone to carry that list. And that's because you could really plan to do photos at this amazing bridge, but the circumstances of the day as they unfold don't allow for that to happen. And so what you really want is a photographer who will see the bridge, but also see all of the other amazing opportunities that present on the day.
And basically, without a list, you're in the moment.
Without a list, I'm in the moment. Without a list, I'm thinking on my feet. We can pick a location. I've had this experience many times where I've scouted ahead, like in advance of the wedding day, or I always arrive early and I've scouted and I've eyeballed some things based on what the client said they liked. And I said, we're going to do this. But the day unfolded and we couldn't do this. And or the day unfolded and the light was just not conducive to the look that the client would have wanted. The client wouldn't have liked it. And so I needed to be able to think on my feet and choose the best option in the moment.
Yeah. That actually brings me to one of the questions I had, which it kind of involves the pacing of a day, because as you know, these are long days, and as your website makes it clear, you start early and they go late, and sometimes, as you're saying, it doesn't always work out. You may, the venue for the wedding may not offer you the best angles or the light that you want. So how do you kind of keep yourself focused and know that, all right, that might not have been the best, but I still have the reception, I still have the formal portraits, and I'm gonna, I got to keep myself going throughout the day. I mean, and you can answer that in terms of your mental space or how you keep yourself hydrated and nourished. How do you work yourself through a long day like that?
Sure. So one of the things I think there are a couple of things. Experience has served me well. Right. So one of the things is that I have encountered all kinds of things. I could write a book on all of the mishaps or monkey wrenches that have been thrown into the wedding day. And I have wild stories.
Yeah.
And so that experience, what comes with that experience is a certain level of confidence in your ability to ride those storms. I also have, and it could be a personality trait. I am resilient, and I am also, so I'm not very easily thrown off track. And I also am really strong at improvising. And so the experience kind of has taught me what to anticipate, and has taught me it has also built a library of all the crazy things that might possibly happen on the wedding day. But that coupled with kind of having this this being in a headspace of knowing, embracing the fact that I'm here to document what happens and not control what happens. And once you get into that space that you're there to photograph the things that happen and photograph the people that are there and that are present, not control what happens, that is a very freeing thing. The other thing is that you really need to get out in front of your clients' expectations about just that. I tend to attract a lot of very meticulous type A personalities. Not a lot, but I have a fair share of clients that are cross your T's, dot your I's planners. They have charts and all the wonderful things that leading up, and they want to control.
And is it usually the bride? I mean, just to ask a question.
I've had brides, grooms, everything. Like I've had it all. Moms. Oh my gosh. Love moms, but I've had some moms that, there are those who want to, and it's a feeling of fear or feeling of that control they want over every minute of the day. What's underneath it is fear that things won't go the way they want. And it's important, especially with that client, to get out in front of the expectations that, put your plans in place, but be open and be ready to the notion that things might not go to the minute the way you planned it, and that's okay. That's why you hired professionals, because we'll still be able to bring you the magic even when things go off script.
By the way, you know what Murphy's Law is, right?
Yes.
Okay, do you know what Al's law is?
No, what's Al's law?
Murphy was an optimist.
Oh, wow.
Okay. You're welcome to steal that. Anyway, John, you're about to ask something. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to ask Kesha to kind of look back to when she just started as a wedding photographer. I mean, did you come into it ready to go, or these skills that you're talking about and your personality traits, did they develop and evolve over time? I mean, is a lot of it just the confidence of having done it so many times, or do you feel like you were built for it?
I would say, so in the beginning, I had my fumbles. I had the things that happened that rattled me, but I do have a personality. They say it's a Gemini air sign thing. I don't hold on to things. I'm able to bounce back and recover and keep moving. Like that is a personality trait of mine, and I think it serves you well in weddings. In the beginning, I definitely didn't just pick up a camera and jump into lead main shooting a wedding. It took me a while before I built up the confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to do this as a main shooter. I was a second shooter. I held people's lights for a long time before taking my first wedding. And when I did take my first wedding as a main, I gave her all kinds of warnings. There were all kinds of waivers in our contract. Like, that you are hiring. This isn't my first time. I mean, that's the lawyer in me, like completely unnecessary probably. But I had all these like warnings and so it took me a while. I learned that I need to have my mojo intact too, because, even though it's business, it's still, I'm a human being. And so I need to, in order for me to be ready for the day, I need to do things like have my iced coffee or be rested or make sure I have snacks. So you learn that, those are some of the things that I kind of picked up on very early on.
Yeah, for sure. And what about the legal work? I mean, were you a full-time practicing lawyer prior? And even if you weren't, what did those skills, do you utilize them still? I mean, not necessarily in drawing up contracts, but in what you were kind of describing earlier?
And also, what kind of trauma did you experience that made you go from being a lawyer to a photographer?
Trauma.
Yeah, what happened?
You can answer John's, but we want to come back to this because there has to be a story there. Go ahead.
There is a story. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily call it traumatic, I'd be happy to share it. But I'm sorry. What was the question again? The first question.
Well, it just really was, how, what skills from, I think Alan's question might be the better one. Why the heck did you go from, from being a lawyer to a wedding photographer.
That, my parents asked me the same question to
I
me.
bet.
No. So honestly, photography has always been my creative outlet. True cliche form, it was a hobby. So it's always been there in the wings, and the hobby turned into like a freelance side thing that I was doing even while I was a lawyer. So I did do some work as a photographer while I was a full-time lawyer. But my decision to change careers was not this bold, brave decision. I was laid off, downsized out of a job while expecting twins. And we had just bought our first home, my husband and I. And so the timing was horrible.
Timing is everything, yeah.
Yeah, that timing was perfect. So yeah, I did have a shift in circumstance that I didn't ask for, but it happened. It was during the financial downturn, 2009. And so here's the thing. When that happened, although, the timing was terrible, we were positioned enough for me to slow down. I didn't have to scramble and start looking for work right away. And so I did need to figure out what was going to happen, what would be our next move, but we weren't in a dire, urgent situation at the moment. And so what I am expecting twins, getting, downsized out of what I thought to be a secure job kind of made me reevaluate everything. My family was growing. I had a then 3-year-old son. My family was about to go from 3 to 5. And I just sat with that and thought about what I wanted to do. I did initially, after having the twins, start looking for work again as a lawyer. And I did resume working as a lawyer, but greater opportunities started to open up for me in photography that were not in the legal field. And I just felt like it was getting some kind of divine sign to push me in this direction. And so that kind of all that sequence of events, my family growing, it changed my perspective about what it means, what job security looks like, what fulfillment looks like. I wanted to do something that would allow me to have some more control over my schedule because I now was a mom of 3. And I wanted to feel a little bit more control over whether or not I get to earn money. I didn't like to be at the mercy of someone else. I felt like it was a false sense of security. No hate on actually, working for someone because, I continued to do that as I built my photography business. But I just knew that I felt like this was an avenue for me to be able to get a little control.
What was the first thing that you did, or the first thing, looking back, it felt like the first thing you did to kind of start this new career? I mean, was it as simple as going out and buying a set of cameras, or did you get an LLC, or were there any kind of big steps that said, okay, this is where I'm going?
So I didn't make a decision, I'm going to start a photography business. I got a job. I got a gig, assignment that was a pretty good assignment. It was for a corporate entity. And it was just like light bulb moment. Somebody wants to pay me to do this. And not just somebody, look at all of this potential. And so, and mind you, I think the first step was I started researching, things I wanted to know what the prospects were for photographers, and it didn't look too pretty. Started researching, what photographers earn or how to price yourself, what areas of photography are good areas to focus. So I started to do homework. That was kind of my first step. And I had to ignore all of the job listings that my parents tried to send me. But yeah, my first step was to kind of do some research about the industry, because before that it was really a side thing. It was, people had paid me for photography before, but it was lots of smaller things. Right. Mostly did it for fun.
Right. Okay. All right. And then slowly but surely, here we go.
I got my house in order first, and once I realized that I wanted to be a business, I decided how I wanted the business to be structured and formed, and I got all of the things that I needed to be able to be a legit operational business, and
Yeah.
the rest grew from there. I
Huh.
made lots of mistakes too.
No, well, that's
how
part
you
of it
get
for
better.
sure. For sure.
Yes.
Kesha, you were talking a little bit about, I guess, I don't know what the word is, but a tough time back in 2009 that kind of pushed your hand and had you thinking about a new career. What about March 2020? We were all faced with another situation, not all that different, I suppose, from 2008, 2009. But you're in a field now that is almost devastated, at least at the beginning, by the shutdown and the pandemic. How did you react initially, and what's come of that?
Yeah, that was there's nothing I could do about this situation. I'm sure it was, yeah, that period, March to like June-ish, right? I don't remember when the world started to reopen, but definitely March and April, things froze to a halt, right? We couldn't do anything, at least not anything involving being in contact with people unnecessarily. And actually, at the start of it, just as we went into the shutdown orders and things like that, I had a wedding right at the start of that. The day that I was leaving for my wedding, my kid's school was being closed and moving to remote distance learning. So it was just a very unsettling moment in 2020. But I think the personality trait comes in handy for things like this. There's twofold. I've had a lot of highs and lows on this path. Lots of highs and lows. I've weathered those lows because of an amazing network of support, but also just being able to kind of slow down in that moment and reset. And so that's kind of the first thing I did, was not try to fight against what was happening, but sit down and think about what my next move was going to be.
Did you get a lot of were there a lot of cancellations, or people just all postponing and saying we'll talk in a few months, or how was it initially?
It was certainly like it came in waves. So no, I didn't get immediate cancellations. I was the timing of it just so happened that I think I only had the one wedding in March, or I might have had another in what. So the first round of cancellations I got were the April weddings. I think April was the start of my wedding season in 2020. Like that March wedding, if I'm remembering correctly, was my only wedding in March. And so in terms of busy season, that started in April. And so my other couples that were like in the summer and in the fall, there was a lot of optimism. I had a destination wedding in June that didn't pull the trigger in March. I had two destination weddings in June. And so there was a lot of just kind of optimism and like, oh, this will be over soon, wait and see. But the April weddings, of course, immediately kind of jumped into action because they knew that they would be impacted.
Right. So maybe I can jump ahead and talk about that March wedding, because I was looking at the photos, and the dates that I see on it is March 13th. So like you said, right when the shutdown was happening, but you were jetting off to St. Martin for what looked like a really fun wedding. I mean, I'm looking at the photos here. I mean, I love the top shot that you have here of one of the brides in her tux, and I don't know who the other woman is. Is her maid of honor, perhaps, but like straightening her tie. It's just a beautiful photo.
Those are her crew. That's her crew.
Her crew, yeah, and it makes it look like such a fun wedding. And I also had a sense that because the rest of the world was freaking out around you guys, you might have felt, like here you are on an island, end of the world type of stuff. How can you talk about that wedding and how it went, and maybe just in general on destination weddings?
It was a surreal bubble because the timing of it was so interesting. I was leaving, that literally was the marker of how things used to be and the new normal. So I was leaving right on the what for me personally was the transition day, because the day before that wedding, there was no mask recommendation. We didn't, the day before, like a couple of days, not the day exactly, but before leaving for that wedding, we still were figuring things out. We didn't know what the call to action would be for responding to the pandemic. But so the day that I left, my husband and I, who photographed the wedding with me, we were probably only a handful of people that were wearing masks. We weren't even sure if we should be wearing masks. There was a lot of debate about it at the time, and we felt a little self-conscious about it. But I was like, let me err on the side of caution. But I remember being in the airport, and it was sporadic. On occasion, I came across somebody with a mask, but we definitely, were one of the few. And when we got to the island, it was like we were in another world. There was, we were in St. Martin. I imagine at that time in March, the numbers were extremely low. That island didn't have as high. It took them a while to start getting impacted. And so while we were there, we were in a bubble. Like, everyone was having a great time. People jumped into the pool together. There was dancing. There was hugging. And it was a beautiful time, because I came back to the chaos of distance learning and should we or shouldn't we be wearing masks and things like that. And yeah, it was just a different world that we came back to after that wedding.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and we come back more with Kesha Lambert and wedding photography. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
Okay, we are back. A little reminder, Kesha will be speaking at the Depth of Field Portrait and Wedding Conference on March 7th and 8th, 2021. More about that at the end of the show. Kesha, could you tell us briefly what you're going to be talking about there? Have you figured it out yet?
Yes. I will be I will be sharing about a topic that is true to my life. I'll be sharing about ways working under pressure on the wedding day, and just how to get a successful outcome and happy result, because weddings are full of pressure.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
No, you didn't know?
That's one of the things that I tell you, I've always admired about wedding photographers. But the truth of the matter is, you are really dealing with people at their most intense levels of emotion, and not always in a positive way. And I think that it's pretty remarkable if you could be a long-term wedding photographer and do the kind of work that you're doing, because it is not easy. There is pressure on that. And on that note, John wanted to ask a question about large groups, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, John?
Well, I did want to get into that a little bit. And I think also, just to jump back, it sounds like you discussed a little bit in the first half of the show some of the ways that you do work under pressure, and I hope our photographers listening can take note. But one thing that really stood out, I mean, as we mentioned in the intro, there's some incredibly intimate photos where you're just right up, in with the bride or the groom or both, and you just feel the intimacy. But what really stood out to me are some of the large photos, or the wide, I should say, photos you have of the wedding parties and the locations that you've put them in. There was one on the city bike dock. There was one on a basketball court, and even the one I saw where the whole, it was like 20 people were on the stairs of the side of a building. It looked like, and with a bunch of negative space. And so the compositions themselves are great, but what really stood out to me was how every single person just looked happy. I mean, I don't know how you can do that. I mean, I've shot large groups before, and there's always somebody who's got a scowl or half an eye closed or something
John,
like that. I mean,
you're missing one thing, John. There are no children in those pictures. That's why it came out.
Okay.
No.
Children in trouble.
That's hilarious.
No, I'm sorry.
We photograph children too.
Yeah.
You're hilarious.
But it is how, I mean, can you, I don't know, describe or put one or two kind of pointers to folks to how you can kind of keep that many people focused and at the same time keep the spontaneity alive?
Yeah, so it definitely is a challenge, and I could teach I could do a whole entire class on how to things you can do to be able to get these kind of non-traditional photos with a larger count of people. But I guess if I had to narrow it down, one of the biggest game changers for me was making sure I took care of like getting the safe shot first, because I like to play and take risks and do all that wonderful stuff. And so I make sure I get those photos that I can do in 0 to 60 seconds done fast. And it's usually something clean, classic, and traditional. I prepare for it in advance. So I'll have like an assistant or, make sure my, whatever I need to execute the shot is set and ready. So I'm not fumbling around. And then once that's done, then I can take chances and, and play. The
So
other
you do
thing
have a shot list. See?
Yeah, I do. I have an internal shot
but
list.
it's your personal one, though.
I absolutely take care of business because I am providing a service. That's another thing. I think the lawyer channel in my head starts thinking about the obligations. Like people will take that as like a contractual obligation. That's the other type side of the coin. I just don't want people, I want to manage expectations as it pertains to shot lists because it just simply, I am aiming to get those shots that they need and want, but also trying to manage expectations.
Your points are all well taken. Yes.
But
anyway.
yeah, with the groups, another thing is kind of knowing what you need to be able to execute. And that goes beyond like your gear. For me, knowing what I need means I don't want people shooting over my shoulder. Like I need to eliminate distractions for the group because people who don't need to be in the photo are a distraction, or phones and things like that in the environment are a distraction. So I'll play school teacher every now and again and clear a space. Or if there's a wedding planner involved, they usually are my partners in crime, and they'll make sure that, we have a space cleared that is free of distractions. And then a third tip I would say is just make them your partners in crime. Don't, we're there to serve the bride and groom, but make efforts to connect with the wedding party as well. And the family, like, have light banter with them throughout the day, pay attention to relationship dynamics. You start to scan out who's besties and who's the clown and who's the comedian. So just kind of bond with people throughout the day where you can, because then they become your partners in crime.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. It sounds like, again, part of this kind of skill that you have of just knowing the space and knowing the people. And I guess you're a quick read. You can kind of pick up on, who is that person that is going to be in charge of the group or the dynamics within the wedding party. That's great.
It's like getting a read on the jury, right?
Yes. Good. That's a good
Let me ask you
analogy.
a more serious question, actually. Out of a lot of the weddings I've been to in the past few years, something that I think it's wrong to do, and it must drive photographers crazy, is that during the procession itself, everybody is taking out their phones and videoing, and it's like you got this. It looks like it's a concert going on. It's like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you ever make requests that people not do that, or do you just hope for the best? Because I think it's rude.
Yeah, and it's also it's so. I get that people get excited and caught up in the moment, and they know that they're not going to get the wedding photographer's pictures like the guests, and so they want to get their pictures. But
be there in the moment.
Be present, right?
Yes.
You're there to experience this wedding, not document it. So to answer your question, I do have like an exclusivity clause, exclusivity of coverage clause in my contract that addresses that. Basically, what I do is I can't control whether guests take out phones or whatever, but I do kind of give the couple an incentive to get out in front of that. And what it says is that they're assuming the risk, essentially, of what might happen in the event of there are other people's photographic activity with cell phones, iPads, or other professional equipment, that, if they allow that to happen, that these are the potential things that can happen, and they acknowledge and understand that, and it's I paint a pretty accurate picture of what can happen if there's interference there. You might have your auntie in your first kiss photo. You might have people leaning into the aisle. You're going to a sea of cell phones if you allow this to happen. And so that, coupled with kind of talking to my couples about that, I've been kind of blessed enough to have couples who will have the unplugged wedding ceremony. They'll some make an announcement. But I have to say, not even with an unplugged ceremony, people don't listen. And so I like to give people a benefit of the doubt. I think it's more excitement than it is selfishness. But yeah, I have a lot of couples who will do unplugged, make an announcement.
See, the only announcements I've ever heard, and it's very frequent, is that, the ceremony's about to begin. We'd appreciate if you'd silence your phones. Okay, well, put your camera shutter on silent. But no, the thing is, they're silencing. Well, not everyone's silencing their phones, of course, because you always got them that don't. But the phones are still up. They're taking pictures, so they're still creating this visual chaos.
No,
Whatever.
so
We can get on that.
we can talk about this for days. No, I've actually had people spell it out, and I've had some pretty funny officiants really relate to the guests. Like, look, we don't want you ruining these pictures. This couple paid a lot of money for, they really. I've had some officiants plain out say it. And I even a friend of mine who is an officiant, she actually does something which I think is nice. She tells people you can't use your phones during the ceremony, but there's a moment in the ceremony where she says, everyone, now's your chance. Before we do this, take your phones out. And I think, that to me, when you make it an isolated moment for them to be able to do it, but keep your phone away every other time, I think that to me is a cool touch.
You're making a deal with the audience. I think that's pretty good. You're acknowledging you're acknowledging their right to do that, and you're acknowledging the fact that yes, you are here and you're supposed to be enjoying yourself, and it's part of it. But let me do my job, and then we'll all have a good day. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Lighten it up.
Brilliant. Married by Rev Roxy is her name. She's a friend of mine, but she's really awesome.
Great.
That's great.
I want to jump quick back to some of the wide shots that you did of groups, and it doesn't have to be just groups only, but on a more technical level, what is the widest lens that you'll work with? And following up, do you correct wide angle distortion in post when you have, let's say, a group of people spread out across the frame?
Yes, I use Lightroom for that. I also, so the wide lens I'm working with now, it's just incredible. The 12 to 24 GM.
Mm-hmm.
And for one of the first things I was blown away by is how there's little to no distortion in my wide, ultra wide shots. But that being said, before this lens, I kind of played around with figuring out where to position people in the frame to kind of minimize them landing in areas that where distortion would be heaviest.
You never place anybody in the corners, ever.
Never.
Especially an arm or a thigh. I mean, you just don't do that.
You don't, and you watch the tilt of your hands, watch the tilt of your lens, things like that. Absolutely, can all play into your work. And I just love ultra wide angles. So
you do, by the way, have some photographs on your site where the distortion is quite noticeable, but it works because it's the way
it's on purpose.
Well, it works with the visual dynamics of the photographs. I mean, distortion can be used. It's not always terrible. If you work with it, it's okay. Exactly. Right. And the thing is, this is what I have, and I'm working with it, and you do it, and you pull it off well. So that's an important thing.
Are you thinking of the dance photo? There's the one of a dance photo of a woman and a guy, and her hand is kind of extended, but it works perfectly.
His arm is distorted because he's right in the corner. Her dress has some distortion as well, but that angle, I wanted to pull that perspective, and so that's definitely an example of where I wouldn't be trying to get rid of the distortion because it served the composition of the image.
There was another shot you have of a group in it, like it looks like an archway. It almost looks like Princeton University, some old building. And also you're using just, again, it's the architectural lines that they lend themselves to this thing, and the way you had everybody positioned. It works.
Right.
It works.
And how much do you, for example, there's a couple, Simone and Sharif. I was looking at their photos, and they're a beautiful couple. They're very cool. How, when you're in the moment, and of course you've probably spoken with them several times beforehand, but how does someone's style affect your choice of location or even the lighting? As much as you can control it in composition. I mean, do do you look at this couple and say, wow, they're very cool. Let's make them look like fashion models? Or does that just kind of, you do that for everybody?
Or how much comes from the client?
Right. So I would say a lot. Okay. So there's a balance. I lean and I also convey this to my couples. I have a style and I have inclinations, and I bring that with me to every client that I work with. But one of the things I preach often is that I want each of my clients to have their own signature, something that reflects them. And so in order for me to get there, that secret ingredient is the client. And so the client is definitely, and their style, their vibe, their personality. That's why I spend a lot of time trying to get a feel for who people are, knowing what they're wearing, things like that, figuring out where we're going to photograph them. If they ask for my input on location, all of that ties back to what I know about them. And that might not necessarily mean that some clients come to me because they're like, hey, I'm really reserved and I'm usually pretty plain, but for my engagement session, I want to be Beyonce, and so they're coming to me to bring that out of them. And so in that case, I'd be doing more of the putting my flavor into who they are. But, for the most part, when you use Simone and Sharif for example, the moment I saw them, I'd spoken to them, but when I saw them, their energy, the chemistry between them, the way they were dressed, that was a ton of inspiration for how I should approach photographing them.
And your conversations with the bride and groom or the couple is usually emails, text, a combination of everything, or do you always meet them prior?
Well, even before the pandemic, I didn't meet people in person a lot. I guess it's the times that we are in, which is fine for me. People are busy, but I do try to face-to-face. So I've always made use of video chat. So Zoom, Google Meet, I like to make use of those things. I am accessible. I have a cell phone that is designated for client interaction. And so some people are texters and I don't mind it. They will text, and I can interact with them there. I am very intentional about carving out how many communication time to communicate with clients. I do want to interact or connect with them at least once before the engagement session. And when I say connect, if we can have a face-to-face via video chat, definitely, or a phone conversation. But leading up to the wedding day, I want to have interacted with them several times, and I carved out 3 touch points. And that's just because, and it might seem like a lot, but a touch point for me is it could be a text message, or a video call, or a phone conversation. Some people email me a lot, and some people I barely hear from them. But I do want to have those communication touch points because I'm rapport building, and rapport building when you do work like weddings where there's so much emotion tied to whether a person and personal preference tied to whether a person might be happy with the outcome. I want to build rapport. And so that's kind of why my thought process about that.
Gotcha. Quickly, I know you're a Sony shooter, so can you mention the cameras you're using now, and if you have any thoughts on changing, anything enticing you? And quick question also about lighting. I mean, what do you tend to bring with you just to have in case you need it?
So I'm currently working with the A9 II, and that's kind of my staple for weddings. I also have an A7R4, which I love for portraits because of all that wonderful resolution, number of other things with the A7R4. So that's what I'm working with. Lenses. If I mentioned this the other day, I could photograph an entire wedding with just my 85 and my 12 to 24. Those are kind of like the 2 go-to perspectives. But in my bag, I have a macro lens. I have a 24 millimeter, a 50. So I have all the things that a wedding photographer might potentially need, even though I don't always use them. And the rationale behind that is because I might be confronted with a situation where I need to use a different type of lens. Example, like Catholic churches sometimes won't allow you. They're like, photographer, you have to stand 20 rows 30 rows back. You can't come up here. In certain circumstances, if I want to be able to capture the wedding a certain way, I might need a different lens.
Yeah.
In terms of what I want, I cannot wait to get my hands on A1. The A1 is definitely coming home
Yeah.
one day.
And lighting, do you carry an LED kit with you, or do you have something just in case you need to throw some light into a situation?
So lighting, I have tried it all. I definitely use off-camera lighting, so flashes and medium strobes. I am currently using Profoto system, so I have
which ones? The A series, B series. Which ones are you using?
A1X and B10 Plus, B10
Gotcha.
and B10 Plus. So
Yeah.
those are lightweight, portable, battery operated, perfect for wedding photographers.
Yeah.
I need to be movable and lightweight, but still need to be able to bring some of that, bring some of that power to the wedding day, and some of the experience that you might get in a controlled setting, to the wedding day. I do use continuous lights. I also use the Stella Pro light system. So Stella, I have the CLX10 and 2000. There's a ton of situations where I've even photographed an entire wedding with the Stella lights. So in terms of what I have with me, I bring all the things. I have reflectors, diffusers, umbrellas, soft boxes. I have the mag box. I use a mag box system. I don't necessarily bring all of those things with me into the actual venue, but I bring them with they're on hand.
Right.
And I would say just in case, like,
yes,
I'm prepared. I can always run out to the car and get it. So I bring all the things, but I'm usually when I walk into a wedding venue, I will have my like an A1X on a handheld by an assistant. I will have a B10 Plus kind of mounted, on a light stand, and I will have like my lenses and my Magmod system and stuff like that packed in my backpack. So I'm very lightweight. I'm usually just holding a light stand, and my assistant is also holding a light stand, and I have a backpack or a bag, one camera bag, when I'm walking into a venue.
Gotcha. Wow. Cool. Quick question about the Wedding Photojournalists Association. I mean, I know as you described your kind of workflow, there is a lot that connects wedding photographers and photojournalists nowadays. And I think we were talking a little bit about it earlier. You have to be ready for everything. It's constantly go, go, go. Can you just tell us a little bit about the Wedding Photojournalists Association?
Sure. So, and I don't know the exact percentage, but the Wedding Photojournalists Association, in order to be a member, there's a certain percentage of your work needs to be documentary in style. And so that means that you are not directing a moment or setting up, staging something. A certain percentage of your portfolio needs to reflect that you have taken this observation perspective, that you're documenting as opposed to immersing yourself. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people who come from a journalism background who make the transition into weddings, and they bring that journalism approach to weddings. It's really just a brilliant style of an approach to photographing weddings.
And what does the association offer? Is it just camaraderie and feedback?
Yeah, it's a way for a potential client to identify that you are a person that takes this style and approach. So they do have a searchable database, and so for someone, it's not always easy to identify what photographers take this style and approach simply from looking at their Instagram feed. Maybe you might immediately get that impression, but it's a great search tool for a potential client. But it's also like a community for recognizing. So they have a system of awards and people and competition. So it's a great way of like competing and getting and kind of elevating your work.
Gotcha.
And all that wonderful stuff. So it's a community of photographers, and also, it's a space where you can be found by clients looking for that style of work.
Gotcha. Which actually gets us back to your website, which I know we mentioned it earlier, but I really love how you kind of cross-reference the styles of wedding you do and the locations, and it really makes it easy for people to know, if this is what they want, you have it.
Thank you.
It's really well done. Do you think that after you're done with the day's shoot and you have hundreds or thousands of photos and you edit it down and you bring it to the couple, is it kind of easy for that couple to find the one photo that they're going to put on their mantle? Does it always seem to pop out from the rest? And is it also the one that you choose? You know what I mean? Or the one that you thought might be
Does
the
it
best of the
align?
best?
So
Yeah.
I can answer the second question easier. So my goal is to make it hard for them to choose.
There you go.
For them to be so wowed that they don't know what to do with themselves and they want to put
That's right.
1,000 photos on their wall.
Right.
So that's the goal. And a lot of times I'll get reports that, like, Kesha, why, that's when I know I've done a great job, when the client goes to me, Kesha, why did you do
I
this
can't
to
choose.
me? I can't
Right.
choose.
Right.
But in terms of whether it aligns with what I choose, not always. Definitely, I think what might speak to a client, we might both have the same image appeal to us, but for different reasons. And what a client might put on their wall might also be tied to a sentiment that I'm not attuned to. So,
Right.
So the short answer to that question is that it's not always in line with what I see out of the bunch, that I'm like, oh, I gotta put this on my portfolio. I gotta post this on Insta. I gotta blog
Right.
about it. It doesn't always align with mine, but sometimes it does.
Have you ever had any problems where you put one out on your Instagram and you love it, and there's obvious maybe photographic reasons why it's a great photo, but the couple's like, that's not our favorite. Do you mind, or does that never really come up?
That doesn't, and I'll tell you why. It's not because I'm just so great at picking out pictures, or that I've never gotten an unflattering or something that a client felt was unflattering of them.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why it doesn't happen, and I learned this lesson very early on, is that I let the client have eyes on things before I post them. So I think it's not I think it's important, especially having been on the client side of the experience. I know what it's like to see a photograph that I'm like, this is an amazing photo, but I hate the way I look in it. I've had that happen. And I can understand that about weddings in particular. So I typically will, I have a questionnaire and I ask them how they feel about being posted online, and just in general. Because some people are very private. I tend to attract a lot of people who love Instagram and who don't mind it. So that's not a big problem. But the second thing that I do is I will they create a favorite selection. And if it overlaps with something that I want to share, then boom, I know what to post. So they know that it's going to happen. They're not blindsided. And I can see the pool of pictures that I should choose from when they choose favorites and they make selections. Or I will choose a selection and say, hey, just, I want to blog these. I'm going to share these. Can you put eyes on it and let me know if there's anything you'd like to keep private? They appreciate that heads up. I learned this lesson very early on, because although, you as a photographer own the copyright and it's business and you want to leverage your photos, at the end of the day, you're doing people work, and your word of mouth matters more than getting to show a particular photo. And so I'm always kind of bearing that in mind in what I choose.
Good point.
Very good points. Yeah. Weddings are naturally color. It seems that the preference is just for color. You do have some black and white, and the black and white you have is very, very strong. Is it safe to assume that these are converted after the fact from color, or do you intentionally say, okay, some of this stuff I know is going to be in monochrome? Do you have a thought process, or is this just after the fact?
So I shoot in color.
Okay.
I always, because I deliver a mix of color and black and white to the client. And in terms of my intention behind what becomes a black and white, there are some that I know I'm photographing it with the intention of converting it to black and white. So there are some definitely, like the portraits or moment things. There's certain things that, when I capture it, I know that this is going to be a black and white. And then there are definitely some that I'm intentionally I chose this spot and this lighting setup and, or position the client in this patch of light because this is going to be a black and white. So that's kind of my approach when it comes to converting. I know some of my peers that deliver their weddings in both color and black and white, which I think is also brilliant, because then you get out in front of those, hey, what would this look like? Can I have this one in color? I should mention that when I do convert to black and white, I do very unless I just absolutely for creative integrity reasons, just don't want it to be in color, I do also give them the color version of the same photo.
Okay, interesting.
Weddings are an interesting space of like being an artist and also being a service provider and constantly balancing those two things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been terrific speaking to you for the past probably over an hour now. If people would like to catch up with more of your work, where should they go to?
I am findable by name. So my website is KeshaLambert.com. I am on Instagram at Kesha Lambert. I am on TikTok at Kesha Loves Hats, and Twitter, because I do love hats, and Twitter is Kesha Photo.
That's great. And all this information will be in the show notes. If you didn't jot it down, it's there. And it's well worth pursuing. Kesha's work is absolutely wonderful. Kesha is also going to be speaking at the upcoming Depth of Field Portrait and Wedding Conference on March 7th and 8th, 2021. DOF is a free virtual conference hosted by B&H and sponsored by Canon, Nikon, Sony, Godox, and HP NVIDIA. Check out the B&H website for further details. And if you enjoy listening to the B&H Photography Podcast, you can let our boss know how much you love us by subscribing to the show. All you have to do is go over to wherever you snag your favorite podcast and type in B&H Photography Podcast, hit enter, and boom, you are one of the family. You can also find us on the B&H Explorer website and on the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group page. For now and forever, my name is Alan Weitz, and on behalf of John Harris and Jason Tables, thank you oh so much for tuning in today.